Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. Before I met my now husband, he was married and divorced. We'll call my husband Jake and his ex-wife Megan. Theirs was not a marriage of love, but a marriage of financial benefit. He was 19, she a little older. He was in college, but she couldn't afford to go. Jake was able to get grants and some small loans to afford college because his parents were dead broke. Megan's estranged father made too much money for her to qualify, so they got married, so the powers that be no longer considered her parents' income and the ability to pay part of her application for grants. Jake worked in commercial real estate and went to school part-time. With his income and both their grants and loans, she was able to go to school full-time, and they graduated at the same time. They stayed together through and a little bit after college. Although they didn't really love each other, they did like each other. Jake started making a decent living and learned to appreciate the finer things in life. His upwardly mobile career allowed them to buy and sell their first house, and then buy a second, nicer home. He also leased them both brand new cars. In 2018, Jake started to feel like their time together had passed its prime. Megan agreed. "I think we both know this isn't working anymore," Jake told her one night over dinner. Megan nodded slowly. "I've been feeling the same way. We had a good run, but maybe it's time to move on." They started the divorce process, and since her job didn't pay that much, they sold the house for a loss during the divorce process, so nobody got that. He decided to give her all the furnishings in their home, paid for by him, agreement to finish out the remaining months on her very nice SUV's lease, in his name and $650 plus per month, half of his not inconsequential savings and retirement accounts, 100% funded by him. She always spent any money she had left after bills on shoes and clothes, never opened or contributed to a savings account. "I want this to be as fair as possible," Jake told her when they were dividing assets. "I know your job situation isn't great right now." "I appreciate that," Megan replied. "I really do." He was very generous, considering our state would not have required he pay any alimony and only a split of commingled assets, and he had come into the marriage with a small sum of savings he never commingled that he could have kept. They used a divorce-in-the-box type place that does non-contested divorces on the cheap. They were amicably divorced 90 days later and both dating their future spouses within a few months of that. Jake and I started dating in early 2019, 3 months after the divorce was final. A year and a half after the divorce, I moved in with Jake, and Megan married her extremely well-off financial boyfriend, Ryan. Her screw up. A few months later, Jake really wanted to make an upward job change, different position in the same industry, which would significantly lower his income for a short time. $0 for at least 4 months, and then a slow but gradual increase resulting in significantly more income after about at least a year of ramp-up. My income could just barely cover all our bills, my soon-to-be car payment. My car was on its last legs, and I desperately needed a new car, and his car payment, but I didn't have enough to cover his ex-wife's $650 plus a month. Car payment. "This is really tough," Jake said one night as we went over our finances. "I know this career move is the right choice long-term, but I don't see how we can keep paying for Megan's car while I'm not bringing in any income. Especially since she's married to Ryan now," I pointed out. "Doesn't he make like 3 times what you do?" Jake decided that since Megan was remarried, he should not have to continue paying for it and should be able to take the car back, and I could drive that instead of buying a new one myself. He thought it was fair, and he read his divorce decree and felt it was possible. We consulted a lawyer who agreed that asking for it back was fair, and although it wasn't written into the divorce decree as alimony, it would likely be treated as such if they ended up going to court, so he had a good chance of winning. Jake called Megan to explain the situation. "Hey Megan, I need to talk to you about the car payments," he began. "What about them?" she asked. "I'm making a career change that means I won't have income for a few months. Given that you're remarried now, I was hoping we could figure something out about the SUV. I really need to stop making those payments." "No," she said flatly, and ended the conversation. Jake called her a week later and asked again, stating that if she still refuses, he will take her to court. "Look, I don't want this to get messy," he said, "but I can't keep making these payments." "I've spoken to Ryan about this," she replied coldly. "We're not giving the car back. That was our agreement." As an alternative, Jake asked if they could take over paying all, or at least some, of the car payment, as the $650 plus per month would negatively impact his career advancement. "We've spoken to a lawyer," she said. "We refuse to pay a penny of the payment. Good luck with your career change." She hung up. On to the next option. Court. Our lawyer had laid out a plan for doing it without representation, so Jake went to the courthouse the next day and filed his complaint. A few days later, Megan called and said she had been summoned by the court and she and Ryan wanted to come over and see if they could work something out without going to court. Great, Jake said after hanging up. Maybe she's finally seeing reason. I wouldn't get your hopes up, I warned. Something seems off, but this is our pro-revenge. We know better than that. The night Megan and Ryan came over, their solution was not to give the car back. No, their solution was, Jake turn in the $650 per month vehicle, pay the early lease termination penalty, and get her a new 36-month lease on a different, cheaper car. Say a $350 one. Considering there were around 18 months left on the $650 plus month lease, that would actually cost him more money in the long run with the penalty. You can't be serious, Jake said, looking between them. That would cost me more in the long run. Ryan leaned forward, his expensive watch glinting in the light. We think it's a very reasonable compromise. That was a big no. Jake just reminded me we made a third attempt at a compromise. We asked that they take over the payment until the time at which his income returned to the pre-divorce level by agreeing to share his pay stubs on a monthly basis to verify he was still below threshold. Once he was back to earning what he made at the end of the marriage, he would take over the payments again. Well, Megan said with a smirk, I talked to a lawyer and he doesn't think you have a snowball's chance in hell of winning in court. Jake looked at them calmly. Okay, have a good night. Bye. And out they went, feeling like they had won. The revenge. The court date came and Jake shows up in court. Megan? Nowhere to be seen. His case gets called. Still no Megan. The judge reads the complaint, listens to Jake's story, and makes his judgment. Paraphrasing. I don't think my ruling would be any different had she showed up to court, but we'll never know. I hereby declare a default judgment in favor of the plaintiff. Once Jake received a printed copy of the judgment, he hatched his plan. He called Megan, told her he won the case, and asked her for the keys. You're lying, she said. There's no way you won. And hung up on him. He went to the dealership to order 2 new keys. He had the VIN, and the car was in his name, so no problem there. Just going to need to see some ID and proof of ownership, the dealership employee said. Jake smiled. No problem at all. He knew where she worked and her schedule. He ordered a tow truck and requested a sheriff's officer at 3:45 for the next afternoon at her workplace. D-Day 3:45 the next day, 15 minutes before she would finish, Jake met up with the tow truck driver and the officer in the parking lot of her work. You sure about this, buddy? The tow truck driver asked. These situations can get pretty heated. I've got all the paperwork right here, Jake replied, patting his pocket. And we've got the sheriff with us. The officer verified the documents, and they located and loaded the SUV onto the flatbed. They moved the truck to the curb right outside the doors to Megan's work. A little after 4 o'clock, Megan walks out, sees the trio in her car on the truck, and freezes in her tracks. This is the conversation that followed. What the hell do you think you're doing? Megan demanded, her face turning red. Taking back what's legally mine, Jake replied calmly. But you can't do that, she stammered. Jake handed her the judgment. The officer reiterated the court's judgment. This is a legal repossession, ma'am, the officer explained. The court has ruled in his favor. Megan's face went pale. But I talked to Kevin. He said you didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning. Those were Kevin's exact words. Snowballs. Chance in hell. Her voice was slightly cracking now. Jake thought for a second to try to figure out who Kevin was. She had said it like he knew who Kevin was. He tried to figure out a lawyer they both knew named Kevin, but he could only think of their mortgage broker, Kevin. Kevin? Like our mortgage broker, Kevin? Your lawyer is a mortgage broker? Jake asked incredulously. Yeah, Megan admitted, looking suddenly unsure. He said that it wasn't written into the divorce decree as alimony, so you couldn't take it just because I got married. Jake shook his head. Well, the judge may or may not have agreed with you and Kevin, but since you never showed up to court, you lost your opportunity to find out. She was left mouth opened, catching flies. Jake shook the officer's hand, thanked him for his time, said to the truck driver, I'll meet you back at my house, said goodbye to Megan, and walked away. Just when Jake neared his car, she screamed, How am I supposed to get home? He turned around and replied, Call that pansy ass of a man you call a husband that was okay with his wife's ex-husband supporting her. You can't do this to me, she yelled. Ryan is in meetings all afternoon. Not my problem anymore, Jake called back with a wave. They got back to our house, unloaded the tow truck, and the driver was laughing his ass off. When he was finished, he said, That was the best thing I've ever been a part of on the job. The look on her face when you mentioned the mortgage broker. He ended up discounting the tow by a bit, saying, That's to make up for you having to be married to that entitled woman. I sold my SUV within a week, and I took over the payments for Jake's ex's car. Their divorce was no longer amicable. We got married, had a kid, and lived happily ever after. You know, Jake said to me a few weeks later as I was driving the SUV, sometimes justice really does get served. I smiled. And sometimes it comes with a tow truck. The next one is an entitled people story. So this happened about 2 years ago, and I still can't believe how perfectly this worked out. I've got this golden retriever mix named Buddy, who's basically the neighborhood's unofficial therapy dog. He's one of those dogs that just loves everyone and everything, tail always wagging, gentle as can be, the type that would let a toddler use him as a pillow. Every morning I take Buddy for a walk through Riverside Park. It's this nice little community space with walking trails, a small playground, and plenty of green space where people bring their dogs. Buddy knows the routine by heart, and honestly, half the people we see on our walks are there specifically hoping to run into him. The guy who runs the coffee cart always saves him a little piece of his breakfast sandwich. And there's this elderly lady who sits on the same bench every day just so Buddy can come say hello and brighten her morning. Enter Karen. And yes, I'm using that name because this woman was the living embodiment of every entitled, miserable person you've ever encountered. She'd moved into one of the fancy condos overlooking the park about a month before this all went down. Mid-50s, always dressed like she was heading to some important business meeting even though she was clearly retired and had this permanent scowl that made it look like she'd been sucking on lemons for the past decade. The first few times we crossed paths, I tried being friendly. I'd nod, say good morning, normal human behavior. But Karen would just glare at Buddy like he'd personally offended her ancestors. She'd make these dramatic detours around us, clutching her designer purse like Buddy was gonna mug her for it. Things escalated quickly. One morning, Buddy was doing his usual routine, greeting the regulars, accepting some pets from a family with kids, basically being his normal social self. Karen marched right up to me, her face red with what I can only describe as pure rage. She started going off about how my aggressive beast was terrorizing innocent people and creating a public nuisance. I tried explaining that Buddy was just friendly and that everyone seemed to enjoy seeing him, but she cut me off. According to Karen, friendly dogs were actually more dangerous than aggressive ones because people let their guard down around them. She'd apparently done extensive research on dog attacks and was convinced Buddy was a lawsuit waiting to happen. But here's where it gets really good. Karen demanded, and I mean demanded like she had some kind of authority over me, that I keep Buddy on a short leash at all times, prevent him from approaching or interacting with any other people in the park, and basically turn our peaceful morning walks into some kind of military exercise where my dog wasn't allowed to be, well, a dog. When I politely declined and suggested she might want to find a different park if dogs bothered her so much, Karen completely lost it. She started screaming about property values and how she didn't pay top dollar to live in a nice neighborhood just to have it overrun by dangerous animals and irresponsible pet owners. She threatened to call animal control, the police, the city council, and probably the FBI for all I know. The final straw was when she grabbed Buddy's collar and tried to pull him away from a little girl who'd been petting him. Buddy, being the gentle soul he is, just looked confused, but the little girl started crying because this crazy woman had scared her. That's when I decided enough was enough. I told Karen very calmly that she was absolutely right about everything. My dog was clearly a menace to society, and I would immediately implement strict measures to ensure he never bothered anyone in the park again. She seemed satisfied with this victory and strutted off, probably planning to update her HOA newsletter about her successful crusade against dangerous pets. Here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. See, Karen had been very specific in her demands. She wanted Buddy kept away from people in the park. She wanted him on a short leash with no freedom to approach others. She wanted our walks to be quick and efficient with no socializing. So, that's exactly what I gave her. Starting the next morning, instead of our usual leisurely stroll through the main park area where all the people gathered, I began taking Buddy on a very direct route along the perimeter path that ran directly behind Karen's condo building. This path was technically still part of the park system, so we had every right to be there. The beauty of this route was that it passed right under Karen's ground floor patio. Every single morning at exactly 7 a.m., the same time we'd always done our walk, Buddy and I would march past her bedroom window and patio door. And because Karen had insisted on a short leash and no socializing, I made sure to keep Buddy moving at a brisk pace, his collar tags jingling and his claws clicking on the concrete path. Now, golden retrievers aren't exactly known for being quiet walkers. Buddy's a big dog with big paws, and when you add in his collar tags, his occasional happy panting, and the fact that he'd sometimes shake his whole body, the way dogs do, it created quite a symphony. especially in the early morning when sound travels really well. But wait, it gets better. About a week into our new routine, I realized that Karen's bedroom and patio faced east, which meant she got hit with the morning sun right around the time we passed by. She'd started keeping her patio door open to let in the breeze, which meant our morning procession was even more noticeable. Buddy, being a creature of habit, quickly adapted to our new routine. In fact, he seemed to enjoy this route because it was more focused and purposeful. No stopping for pets or treats, just a nice brisk walk. He'd gotten into the rhythm of shaking out his coat right as we passed the midpoint of Karen's patio, which coincidentally was also the loudest part of our journey. The really beautiful part was that I was following Karen's demands to the letter. Buddy was on a short leash, check. He wasn't approaching or bothering anyone in the park, check. Our walks were quick and efficient, check. No socializing with other park visitors? Check. Karen, however, was getting a very different experience than she'd bargained for. Instead of occasionally encountering us during her own park visits, she was now guaranteed to hear us every single morning whether she wanted to or not. And because we were on the perimeter path rather than the main park area, she couldn't really complain that we were in her space. We were staying away from people just like she'd demanded. After about 2 weeks of this new routine, I started noticing signs that Karen wasn't enjoying the situation. Her patio door started staying closed in the mornings. Then I saw her peering through her blinds as we passed, probably timing our route. She even tried changing her own schedule, but since she'd made such a big deal about us being there at 7 a.m. specifically, I felt obligated to maintain that exact timing to show how seriously I was taking her concerns. The final showdown came on a Saturday morning. Karen was waiting for us on her patio, still in her bathrobe, looking like she hadn't slept well in days. She started yelling about noise ordinances and harassment, demanding to know why we'd changed our route. I explained very politely that I was simply following her instructions to keep Buddy away from people in the park. This route ensured we didn't bother any of the families, dog owners, or regular park visitors she'd been so concerned about. I was being a responsible pet owner by taking her advice seriously. Karen tried arguing that this wasn't what she'd meant, but I pointed out that she'd been very clear about her expectations. She'd wanted Buddy kept on a short leash away from people in the park, and that's exactly what I was doing. If she had a problem with public pathways and normal pedestrian traffic, perhaps she should take that up with the city planning department. The look on her face was absolutely priceless. She'd realized that her own demands had created a situation where she was now the one being bothered, and there wasn't really anything she could do about it without looking completely unreasonable. But the story doesn't end there. See, Karen's complaints to the city about noise and harassment backfired spectacularly. When the Parks Department investigated, they discovered that several residents had actually been asking about getting more designated dog walking paths because the main park area was getting overcrowded. Karen's complaints inadvertently provided the documentation they needed to justify creating an official early morning dog walking route, the exact path we'd been using. The city installed proper signage, waste stations, and even some benches along what became known as the Dawn Patrol dog route. Suddenly, instead of being the only ones using that path, Buddy and I were joined by a whole community of early morning dog walkers. The path that ran behind Karen's condo went from a quiet perimeter route to a busy thoroughfare for responsible pet owners. Karen tried complaining about this new development, but the city pointed out that she'd been the one to advocate for keeping dogs away from the main park areas, and this solution accomplished exactly that while still providing appropriate space for pets and their owners. The ultimate irony? Buddy became more popular than ever. All the regular park visitors who used to see him during our old route started joining the Dawn Patrol specifically to spend time with him. Instead of reducing his social interactions like Karen had demanded, her complaints had actually created a dedicated community of people who appreciated friendly, well-behaved dogs. These days, our morning walks are better than ever. Buddy gets to see all his old friends plus plenty of new ones. And we've got a proper route designed specifically for dogs and their owners. Karen still lives in her condo, but she's installed blackout curtains and what looks like a white noise machine. Sometimes I see her watching from her window as the Dawn Patrol passes by, and I always make sure to give her a friendly wave. After all, none of this would have been possible without her helpful suggestions about responsible pet ownership. The best part is that Buddy never changed. He's still the same friendly, gentle dog he always was. The only thing that changed was Karen's ability to avoid the consequences of her own unreasonable demands. She got exactly what she asked for, a dog kept away from people in the park. She just didn't think through what that might actually look like in practice. That's the thing about malicious compliance. When someone makes unreasonable demands, sometimes the best response is to give them exactly what they're asking for, down to the letter. Karen wanted control, but she forgot that giving people very specific instructions might result in solutions she hadn't considered. And Buddy? He's just happy to have his walks and his friends. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being exactly as good as you always were, just in a way that makes unreasonable people face the logical conclusions of their own behavior. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I drive a semi for a living ATM I'm in. The first one, 2 years of bullcrap stage before switch to towing these monsters. I work for a company we will call Welfare Expedited. They suck. But it'd have to take crap till other companies will take me. So I get a load of drywall in New Hampshire and shoot it down to New Jersey to a building supply store. I did everything legally possible to get it there in their timed window, including cooking my books a little bit. As soon as my legally required split sleeper berth break was done, I drove straight there without stopping. I got to said sleep spot with 20 minutes to spare the night prior. GPS said I would be there at like 12:30. But the truck GPS doesn't have traffic, and I'm heading through the Bronx, and over the GW all said and done, I arrived at the drywall spot at 2:06. Their delivery window is 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. So far, no one has even sweat 30 minutes at these places. I generally call if it's going to be more than 15 minutes. I just assume no one's going to be an idiot about 6 minutes. I was wrong. I walk in and give the usual, hey, I'm the Welfare Expedited guy, where do y'all want me to park up? The guy behind the counter, guy #1, looks to another guy, what do you think? I don't hear see what guy #2 says back, but guy #1 says, sorry, the cutoff is 2 p.m. Me, it's 2:06. Guy, sigh. Yeah, the cutoff is 2 p.m. Me. You're serious? I have to come back tomorrow over 6 minutes? Guy, yeah, sorry. He kinda seemed like he thought it was absurd too, but didn't speak up. Me, wow. Now it's not that they can't unload me. The forklift drivers are right there. Nothing is going on. And they end their work day at 4 p.m. They've got 2 hours. The actual unloading with their forklifts will take them 10 minutes. And me getting the heavy tarps and securement off and out of their way, alone? If they asked me to rush it, I could have that crap out of the way in 20 minutes. I could have been out of the way by 2:45 easy. It's not ideal for me to do things that way, but I can. They know that this is their business. They have 5 flatbed delivery trucks themselves. When a Karen wants to buy a product after closing and the underpaid retail workers want to go home, I'm with that, go home Karen. I'd never show up to a restaurant within even 30 minutes of their closing time. I don't order pizza within 30 minutes of closing time. This is worker to worker. And I'm the one being made to go home late. These dudes were going to be here for 2 more hours anyway. This was just one guy's way of feeling powerful. The power of feeling like a theoretical 6 minutes of their time is worth more than a minimum of 16 hours of mine, where I am not paid. And they know that. They know I'm paid by the mile. They know they are costing me a day of pay. They still say no. I literally thought they were joking. So I miss out on hundreds of dollars over 6 minutes. Well, my company takes my next run off me because of this. And now what would have been... drop Thursday, pick up Thursday night, drop Friday morning, pick up Friday whenever, go home, deliver Monday, has become drop on Friday, pick up on Friday, go home, drop Monday. So I headed to a rest stop 10 minutes away and hung out until 1:40 p.m. Friday. I pulled in at 1:56 p.m. just to really show how crappy these people were being. They just hung out and told me where to park at 2:20. That's way after 2:06. It truly wasn't about their time. They ducked me over just to feel powerful, so the cutoff for deliveries is 2 p.m. They close at 4, so I took my sweet-ass time taking the tarps and securement off. The guy who made the call to tell me no, he twice came out and asked me to hurry up. Can you take the tarps off now and roll those straps later? Nah. Well, just warning you, we leave at 4 inches, K. So there these guys are in the hot sun. Thursday had been nice and cool because of rain. We could have done this comfortably. Sitting on forklifts. Waiting for me, who takes a 20-minute crap in their bathroom, takes multiple water breaks in my truck. Eventually, the guy who I'd noticed in the back office this day but didn't see the day before comes out and gets all the plastic wrap off for me, seems real frustrated. But I just roll up my straps all nice and neat, and I admit I screwed up here. They start unloading me at like 3:30. I was shooting for 3:50. I noticed the back office guy talking to the guy who made the call that 2:06 was too late the day before, and he seems animated. Then I take my sweet, sweet time doing the paperwork in my truck that they brought back to me all crumpled up for some reason. I wonder if there was like some behind-the-scenes crash out where one guy was like, duck this dude *, crumples paper and throws it out, and it has to be fished out of the trash or something. And I hang out waiting for a safe way to pull out of their lot so they can close their fences and leave, etc. Till 4:06. I'll never get the hundreds of dollars I lost or that day back. But on day 2... I noticed the hot parking lot smelled like piss for some reason. Edit. Some of y'all seem to not get it. They still had a 2-hour window to get 1 hour of work done. Their cutoff is 2 p.m. to be done by 4 p.m., and there weren't other trucks, there wasn't other crap going on. This was a small dirt lot. The next one is an entitled people story, posting this about my friend Cy, who I'm caring for. This story isn't just his word. I've been helping him with paperwork and helped him go through the downloaded Instagram conversations, messages with the legal aid, emails between his ex-housemates and his disability advocate, etc. This is in Victoria, Australia. A rental bond is similar to an American deposit, what you pay when you move into a rental place. C is physically disabled and on disability pension. In last October last year, Cy answered a housemate ad and moved in with an engaged couple who I'll call B and Riley, both use they pronouns. Cy paid bond, deposit, and rent right away to B, and took a few weeks to hand in his lease forms. Cy keeps screenshots whenever he pays something and still has these. When he moved in, the couple told Cy they would be living there until June-July 2025, but then they messaged him December 2024 that they were moving out in a month and had paid their rent until then. Cy also paid his rent until the move-out date and also moved out. He had to scramble to find a place in time and lived in a boarding house for a while that was unsuitable for his disabilities and is now living somewhere safe. B and Riley posted on social media they'd bought a house. B and Riley told Cy the real estate were being difficult and not giving the bond back. In our state, if the real estate or landlord don't give tenants their bond back, the tenants can apply for bond return via VCAT, Rental Tribunal. Cy suggested VCAT, and the couple said they were going to apply for one but couldn't afford it. C said he'd pay for it because he desperately needed his bond money back, but the couple told him he wasn't actually on the lease, so couldn't do anything. Note, in addition to buying a house, B and Riley were also posting about getting lip fillers and labubus and pool tables for a home bar while telling Cy they couldn't afford VCAT, cost about $70 less than a labubu. From February to June, the couple told Cy they couldn't give him his bond back because they hadn't gotten their bond back from the real estate and they were too stressed and too burnt out to do the VCAT paperwork. Riley sent Cy a few $100 bond payments, which they told S were out of their own pocket, but those stopped in April. Starting in May, C's health drastically declined. He has nerve damage in his lower back that causes difficulty walking, and the medication he takes makes it hard for him to talk or have control of his hands. Riley started getting hostile at Cy, telling Cy they or B would send payments that never arrived, and when Cy would politely say they didn't receive them, Riley would go off that they had no money and that they were paying Cy back out of pocket. Riley told Cy, "I'm at my wit's end, so don't push me." We have all the downloaded messages, and S was being polite, nothing to warrant that reaction. Cy told a social worker at the hospital he was attending about the situation, who reported it. Cy had to give a report and download all the sharehouse conversations. He was then referred to a community legal service who advised him to have his disability advocate send a demand letter for the rest of his money back. At this point, everyone thought B and Riley had gotten their bond back from the rental agent. A VCAT is usually done 2 weeks after leaving a property, not 5 months, and claiming they were too stressed to do the paperwork was bullcrap, along with getting hostile at Cy whenever he asked about it. The real estate agency was contacted, and turns out B and Riley didn't get their bond back for rental arrears, because they weren't paying rent, which was news to Cy because he was paying rent to B. So B and Riley pocketed Cy's bond money, didn't lodge it or add Cy to the lease, and also kept his rent money and didn't pay rent. They didn't get their bond deposit back because of the rental arrears, then have been telling Cy for months they can't give his bond money back because they didn't get their bond money back from the real estate. Cy's advocate sent B and Riley the demand letter via email. They replied back that Cy never cleaned, then that Cy trashed the place, then days later replied that S caused maintenance damages he never paid for. The advocate knew they were lying and trying to divert away from the bond situation, and the downloaded sharehouse messages contained conversations about Cy cleaning and doing chores and mowing, and the conversations after they all moved out were about the bond, no mention of any cleaning Cy didn't do or maintenance he didn't pay for. They also said it was Cy's own fault he wasn't on the lease, which is bullcrap because if the couple had lodged the bond and put Cy on the lease, he would have done the VCAT and found out much sooner B and Riley were taking his rent money and not paying the rent. They messed the advocate around the same way they did to Cy, telling her they'd send a payment on Friday, then never sending it. Riley offered to pay Cy back $50 a fortnight, and the advocate agreed to that. Riley sent one $50 payment, then no more, and Cy's advocate sent an email reminding them this was an agreement they had, but they ignored her and never replied. This is the scummiest thing I've ever witnessed, and we're going to go to the community legal advice again and probably small claims court when Sai's health improves. He's currently receiving medical treatment. A few people have said they'd toss in for Sai's legal fees. The case and the reports keep getting bounced from service to service, and we're already dealing with enough paperwork with the medical stuff. A social worker took over from the advocate this week, but we're unsure how much he can help. The couple are both the kind of people who act like they're good and righteous. This isn't relevant to the legal side, but Sai is mixed race, part indigenous. B has a link on their Facebook to an indigenous charity called Pathrant, the ducking irony. The next one is an entitled parent story. I got a job around 3 months ago. It's my first proper job that doesn't happen to be in a fast food restaurant. No hate. This was to pay for my rent and save up for uni. I live away from my parents because I go to an international school in another city. As per customs in the country I live in, and to show gratitude, I gifted my first paycheck to my parents. It wasn't much, but I could see that they appreciated it and we were all happy. This lasted for 10 minutes. My mother then decided to go on the family group chat to tell everyone. No blame on her, I understand. I then get a call from my aunt, who then proceeds to ask me about the details of my job, which seems fishy considering she hasn't really given a crap about my existence until 2 seconds after that text message is sent. She then explains that her son, my cousin, who goes to the same school and is in my grade, is going to college. No crap. And that I, as a person with a source of income and as a family member's, should pay part of his school fees using my next paycheck as I am part of the family and I should support him. For the record, I know that my aunt has a substantially larger salary than I do, but I guess she doesn't care to spend a dime of it on something that doesn't benefit her. For the record, I know my aunt has a substantially larger salary than I do, but it seems she doesn't want to spend any of it on things that don't benefit her. Additionally, when I got into this school, my mother called my aunt to ask if I could stay with her until I graduated, but she refused, saying they didn't have space. Instead, my parents bought me a small flat, and I have to work to contribute to the rent. My aunt went on about how hard my cousin worked to get into college and insisted that I should have some sympathy for him. Honestly, I don't feel any sympathy for a kid who stays out all night and barely puts in the effort at school. With the little patience I had left, I politely reminded her that most of my salary goes to my own basic needs, such as paying rent and buying food, as well as saving up for my tuition fees, to which she rudely responded with, "If you can do that, you should be able to donate some money. I've always been taught the value of hard work and self-sufficiency." And now it felt like my effort was being taken for granted, and so I then hang up on her out of frustration. Later, I get a call from my mother asking why her sister was complaining about me. I explained my end of the story, and now she has blocked my aunt as well. My aunt realized this and has been pestering other relatives to help cover the fees and guilt-tripping shaming those who don't donate, and is probably ranting in the family chat as I am writing this. It feels good to vent a bit. Sorry if this was long and the wording is weird. My English sucks. Anyway,